navigating security, privacy, and scalability concerns in the world of blockchain. Well, we're looking at covering the subtopics blockchain and cybersecurity, navigating data security in blockchain networks, how data privacy will be a breakthrough use case for 2020, scalability in blockchain challenges and solutions. Well, we have with us our panelists. First up, Maxwell Sanchez, co-founder and CTO of Verilog. Maxwell is the co-inventor of the Proof of Proof protocol, which enables blockchains to inherit Bitcoin's computational security in a fully decentralized, transparent, trustless, and permissionless manner. Passionate about decentralized and trustless technology since 2011, Maxwell has built remote miner management software, OpenCL, GPU miners, cloud services, cryptocurrencies, and more for the blockchain ecosystem. We have Pavel Bain's CEO, Blues Ill, joining us as well. Pavel is an entrepreneur, futurist, designer, and inventor in the exponential technologies. Well, he's also the CEO of Bluesell, a decentralized data ecosystem that allows individuals and businesses to have full data control and ability to monetize the data. We also have Vanessa Ko, the CTO, GBCI Ventures. Vanessa is a techpreneur and a startup specialist who partners with C-suite executives to engineer the best customer-centric products. Vanessa is the CTO of GBCI Ventures, co-CTO BCB Blockchain as well. And this is going to be moderated by George Sebastio, seasoned CTO advisor, Senior Advisory Board Member, Trescon.
Welcome, everybody.
Thank you for joining in.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for the Asia Blockchain Summit and also obviously World Summit in partnership with the Trescon. And it's a pleasure to be here with this esteemed panel to talk about some what I refer to as the key challenges that blockchain has to move forward in its user adoption. So obviously, if we go back on past year, 2019, we have seen about $2 billion of funds that have disappeared from exchanges and from wallets. So obviously, this is an extremely key area, which is the protection of data and protection of loss of funds associated with losing things like private keys. The second element I think is quite important is the issue associated with privacy as well, in the sense that the blockchain as a technology enables the user to dynamically control access to their data. So it allows any kind of monetization that happens on the user data to be under the control of the user, which avoids the problems that we have had in the past with such as of Google, Facebook, and more recently Zoom. So data privacy, obviously a key second aspect. Third aspect that I think important in the adoption associated with blockchain is definitely scalability. As we know, Bitcoin with 7 transactions per second, Ethereum with a few more 1,000 transactions per second, but still not enough. So we have gone through various iterations and generations of blockchain technology, where we have moved more recently into what we sometimes call blockchain 5.0, that enables up to 1 million transactions per second or more, which means blockchain will be able to enable use cases like smart city or IoT-based use cases. I think 2 or 3 other areas that are important that need to also be addressed in blockchain, besides the ones already mentioned, include advancements in the consensus mechanisms, where today we have things like proof of work, proof of stake that is just coming on board, but we have about 40 or 50 key consensus mechanisms that have been developed for specific use cases. And that really means that blockchain can be much more efficient in terms of the kind of effort that is spent in mining. So today we spend a lot of energy, which is not very green or very ecological as an approach. And the last element that I think is important as a challenge to blockchain is the user. We always seem to forget the user. And blockchain, because it's a technology based on mathematics and encryption, the user interface or the UX is not always where it should be. So I think the most successful and the best blockchain projects are the ones where we don't even know that blockchain is there. So the same way we have been able to do it in other industries as well. So I thank you very much for this opportunity, and I'll get now a chance of our panelists to take these points a bit further, also from their perspective as well. So let's start first a little bit with Rohit, who was, Rohit will be in the background, but Justin was online, and he'll take forward these points from his perspective. So Justin, pleasure to be here and looking forward to hear your discussion.
Thank you, Jorge. And Justin wasn't able to make it due to an injury sustained while traveling, so I'm filling in his stead. I'm Axel Sanchez. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Veriblock. And thanks for the intro, Jorge. Just to expand on some of the points you brought up, I think as far as consensus security goes in the blockchain ecosystem, there's a lot of work that's being done, and there's a lot of people who are building individual technologies in silos, and so they're trying to develop a consensus protocol that, say, has a different governance model or has different trade-offs for, liveliness versus reaching finality or security. And so one of the things that we've been working on at Veriblock for the last 4 or 5 years is a way to use existing technologies that are already out there, like Bitcoin's proof of work, to reinforce the consensus protocols that people are developing that have maybe different profiles that they like better for governance or whatever. And so one of the things that we've been developing is called the proof of proof consensus protocol. And the way that it works is it basically allows any blockchain, regardless of what consensus protocol it decides to use to actually create its blocks, it reinforces that with the full security of Bitcoin in a decentralized, trustless, transparent, and permissionless manner. And so you get the security benefits of the enormous amount of mining power that Bitcoin is already using and the amount of electricity that's already consuming, securing itself. And you're able to piggyback on that and reinforce whatever consensus you're already building with that as sort of a backbone of security. So it inverts the equation from Bitcoin being attempting to be the solution provider for every single use case, and says instead, go build your blockchain, go do your use case, go experiment with this technology, and play around with new UI UX capabilities for users, new functionality for how transactions are going to work, or different types of smart contracts, or all kinds of things that aren't possible in Bitcoin. You go do that, you go experiment with it, and then we will use Bitcoin as a backbone to reinforce what you're already doing. And so rather than looking at all these technologies as competing, we like to look at everything in the space as all these experiments that can benefit each other and that can draw on each other's strong points. So Bitcoin may not be great at doing one thing, but it is great at providing long-range security with thermodynamic assurances of how secure that data is. And so why not take whatever you're doing that already has this functionality and security that you built into it, and then back it up to something that's been around for a long time and that we know the security profiles of and has been highly studied. So I think there's a lot of benefits for technologies to go and innovate and create really cool new things, and then take a step backwards and say, what already exists and how can we efficiently leverage that to add additional security to our platforms.
Thank you very much for your key points. And now we'll move on to our next panelist, Mr. Pavel. So please, Pavel, go ahead. You'll have to unmute yourself. Thank you.
There we go.
Perfect.
Hey, I'm Pavel, Bain CEO, co-founder of Pluzel. So we are a decentralized database. We started a couple of years ago. Initially, how we got going was based out of Singapore. We were doing a bunch of blockchain projects for some of the banks and insurers here. So we worked with HSBC, MSIG, MUFG, HSBC, OCBC as well. So some of the bigger insurance, AIA as well. And what we did was build smart contract platforms over Ethereum. So we did an identity management system. And then we also did a travel insurance product. Now, the issue that we had was you had the smart contracts that were decentralized, but we're using a lot of centralized technologies behind it. So primarily being like the database, the user information, all that. And that's and we had a hard time configuring it. And we realized that we're going to move Web3 and everything's going to go decentralized. Well, the whole stack has to be decentralized. It can't just be the financial transactions and the smart contracts. All the information, everything should be. And that's when we started building BlueZell as a decentralized database. So we position ourselves, coming up big now is decentralized storage is coming up big now, because more products want to use it. So you've got Filecoin doing, files, kind of like Dropbox. Well, we're more like Oracle, MongoDB, where we're the database. So we fit complementary to it. And our whole goal is that, with a decentralized database, it'll be available all the time. Won't go down like a centralized database often does. It will be available, widespreading, so it'll be available everywhere. You don't have to partition and keep replicating new servers to different areas that you need to serve, because it's decentralized. All the data is stored everywhere. People have access to it. And then finally, it'll be more secure. It's tamper-proof because it's powered by our blockchain, which is based on Cosmos and Tendermint. So it gives 10,000 transactions per second. And any data transaction that happens on it, like writes or reads, it's verified by our validator network, showing that the rightful owner made these changes.
Okay, so basically BCV blockchain, we currently have a major project in Myanmar. It's called Yatai City. What we do there is to develop smart city technologies with blockchain from scratch. So what we are doing there, because the nearest bank for them is about 10 hours away, we create smart wallets, digital wallets, and we support the stable coins that they issue there. We support point of sale system, we support QR code scanning for payments, we build digital identity for them, we build property ledgers, we build work permits, so that these are all the things that they can use for their day-to-day smart city operations. Some of the stuff interesting things that we do, because in Yatai City, they have limited water and electricity supply. So what we do for them is to build sustainability programs. So the hotels, the condos, the government centers there, they can we implement for them smart meters, which we implement into the day-to-day tracking of utilities as well as water, electricity. So it means that hotels can run promotions like if we have if you use your electricity above a certain limit, you will have to pay 10% more. If you use less than a certain minute, you can go to the restaurant downstairs for a free meal. So these are the kind of things that we implement according to their requirements and according to special needs for the city.
Okay. Okay, continue. Sorry, go ahead.
And in Philippines, we work with the Department of Science and Technology to incubate and build startups. We are planning to support about 300,000 students across the whole of Philippines and fund them with our $15 million. And in Singapore, we just opened up our BCB Innovation Center.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. I would like the panelists to really address the first key issue, which I think is really the key issue of cybersecurity, meaning what specific elements do they think are extremely important to protect the cybersecurity issues, meaning the loss of funds associated with their wallets. So whether they have extra mechanisms associated with biometrics, or they have multi-factor authentication mechanisms in place, or they have the capability to do like key recovery in the case the private keys actually get lost. So Pavel, go ahead.
Yeah, so when it comes to security, I mean, you're only as strongest as the user, right? Like you can build the best vault, home, you can have the best security, everything in place, but if your passwords are 1, 2, 3, 4, there's nothing the security company can do about it. So I think when it comes to security for crypto, I think main thing is it still has to come down to the education, knowing that, I think I was at a panel or an event a few years ago where they said 75% of cybersecurity money is spent on technologies, and when it should be 75% of the money should actually be time or energy should be spent on educating the users or the people who work for the company, because that actually will save you a ton of money in the security side if they're just more educated, because most of the flaws that are happening is because somebody just didn't follow best practices. So I think when it comes to crypto right now, you can have multi-factor authentication, you can have all these different things, but if people just aren't educated on what it means and how to secure themselves, I think it'll be a waste of energy. I think the education is a priority.
Okay, I do agree with you. And this same problem that we have now in blockchain space has been experienced over the banks and over the last 10 years as they deployed online banking systems. They spend all the money on firewalls and sophisticated technology, but not enough on security awareness programs. So we have Maxwell replacing Justin. So Maxwell, what is your specific take on this key protection of security, and what do you consider the key elements that are unique to help drive and protect this cybersecurity in the blockchain space?
Thanks, and Pavel brought up some good points. I think there's the usability side of blockchain certainly huge. Being able to, you can build the best technologies in the world, but if people don't know how to use them, there's really no point. And so there's certainly the user education side, and I think that's one of the, it's 2020 and multi-sig is still hard to use in Bitcoin, and that's a sin. And so I think there's certainly a very large user education side to the story. And I think on the flip side, there's also, you have to build the infrastructure to support security features that users want to see. And so, we talked about loss of funds, and there's essentially three main ways people can lose funds, right? You lose your private keys, which means the funds are gone. It might as well be burnt. You lose them to some sort of a scam where someone convinces you or does social engineering or whatever and is able to actually steal your money from you. And then there's attacks on the infrastructure itself that's between the actual user and what they're intending to do. Things like double spend attacks, where you deposit money on an exchange and then you as the user are the one who's actually attacking the system and clawing your funds back. And so I think those three prongs of security are really where each one has to be addressed, and without all three of them being addressed, you really don't have a secure ecosystem. And so from a user security side, we have all the technologies in place to do proper key custodianship, key and password recovery, multi-sig, complicated authentication schemes, and as people always say, if you don't own your own crypto, if you don't have it, in an address that you control and you own the private keys to, it's really not your crypto. And but at the same time, a lot of users don't feel safe holding their own crypto because it's difficult, it's challenging, and it's easy to lose. And so they want custodianship services. And so I think there's a ton of maturing for the space to do in custodian services that aren't single points of failure, being able to do setups where users are able to spend their own money, but then recovery has to go through multiple disparate entities that aren't or would be very hard to have in collusion. So I think the user side, we have the technologies, and it's really about developing the services and educating users. And then I think on the infrastructure side, that's still an area where spending time and resources in the actual technology is still valuable, because we still don't have solutions that secure everything for everyone all the time. And we're still building, we're still experimenting. And that's an area where we don't know the best practices. And it's not just a case of educating users, but it's also a case of building out infrastructure and building out, developing new algorithms or improving the existing ones or combining existing ones to get better security profiles. And then, so we're not even at the user education stage. User education is important there, but we still don't have the full technical firepower that to give people all the security that we'd like to give them on these systems, regardless of whether they're able to use it or not. So I think on the user education side, for your own fund security, there's tons of work to be done there. And I think on the infrastructure side, it's a little bit more behind. And that's where technologies where, like, for example, leveraging Bitcoin security, using Veriblock and proof of proof, things like that can help to reinforce the solutions. And then we can start looking at user education for how do you identify how secure the infrastructure that you've chosen to use actually is.
Okay. Actually, you bring two interesting points that I think are quite key. The first one is the custodianship. And I will add actually one other element to that custodianship, because some people are not just offering custodian of your wallets, which adds extra security in case of losses of the keys. And it enables you to not keep your funds inside the exchanges, which are not necessarily protected adequately. The other element that goes along with custodianship is the area of insurance, which is coming about as well. So that means you'll have the capability of insuring your funds the same way you get insurance for your funds when you have them, for example, in European or a Canadian bank. The first 100,000 is automatically covered by that insurance. So we have a birth where insurance combined with custodianship is actually going to provide a lot of extra value as well. I think there's also a lot of advances in the area of wallets. There's wallets like Oyo and others that protect the private key much further with biometrics and the EL4, EL5, EL6 certified, which means they are using very unique approaches to enable you not to hack the physical device. Because today, people using mobile devices to store their wallets and their private keys, there's some very serious vulnerability issues associated with either iOS or Android operating systems, because too much malware exists in those environments, and you don't keep those those two environments don't go extremely well. Vanessa described for us several use cases, but I would like to see, for the use cases that you described, what have been really the security challenges and how you have specifically addressed those security challenges as well. Please, Vanessa.
Okay, so that's a very good question. I think I agree with all the panels. The main thing is about teaching the users, but also for us, because we work with a lot of smart cities and regulators and governments. So what we do, we also go work with hand in hand with them. In the Yatai city, for us to implement cybersecurity, we actually built a digital wallet for them, which they can use to do fingerprint scanning, as well as passport, as well as facial recognition. So we combine these three data, store it into that becomes their digital identity, and we use that for verifying for purchases, for verifying paying your utility bills for property, that this property is owned by you. Yeah, otherwise it's just a piece of paper. So those are the kind of things that you need to work hand in hand with technology plus regulatory plus users.
Actually, you brought one point that has not been addressed by any of the previous panelists, and I think is the issue of regulation. So I think that although blockchain as a technology is a technology of trust, if the regulatory framework is not in place, the complete cycle of trust is not established. So that really means we have central bank authorities, like, for example, Central Bank of Bahrain or ADGM in Abu Dhabi, which is the regions where I spend a little bit most of the time, are putting forward the right frameworks to actually advance the regulations, either through an initial sandbox or through advanced control mechanisms in place to protect. And of course, the same has been replicated in Malta, Zug, Estonia, Gibraltar, Singapore, and many other locations around the world. So I do believe regulatory is extremely important, but regulatory is always a little bit behind technology, unfortunately. What I would like to maybe do, since it's almost time to wrap up, looking for if you have any questions from the audience. Oh, one person missing. My longtime friend from 20 plus years is here. I'm glad to see you online. Dr. Marwan is a longtime colleague for 22 years. We did some initial projects actually in the area of mobile security, but he is the head of the blockchain center in Dubai. So he's also the CISO for the city of Dubai. So it means a very big responsibility since it's a smart city. He has about 10 CEO business cards in various areas, including OTC. And beyond that, Dubai just released their metrics about cybersecurity, or their cybersecurity index. So I would like to maybe Dr. Marwan to address some of these key points. Dr. Marwan, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I just joined in, as you know, and I don't know what you were talking about. So
cybersecurity, that's it. Cybersecurity and blockchain, which is what we have both at heart since the days we have been in IT.
Yes, so definitely there's a huge aspect of two things related to cybersecurity when it comes to cryptocurrencies. One is technical enforcement and the cybersecurity and the security of wallets and addresses, of course. And then there's also the security of exchanges. Apart from that, also the personal security of all the users and things like that. So it's as with anything, digital security is at the forefront, and technical ways to implement, as well as social engineering attacks, will always persist, as we've seen today also with Twitter. There were a lot of attacks on fooling people into sending Bitcoin to celebrities and IT heads, and people unfortunately still fall for that. So the human aspect will always be there.
Absolutely. Dr. Marwan, thank you so much. George, if you would just like to finish it up, because our next panel is...
I think I borrowed Dr. Marwan from the next panel.
Yes,
hey, we're improvising.
Just one closing statement from you, please.
Perfect. Yes, my closing statement, I do believe that blockchain is a technology of trust, but we still have some key steps to finalize this complete trust. And the blockchain ecosystem is working very hard to complete that by adding multi-security measures like biometric to keep blockchain safe, driving blockchain adoption with built-in security awareness. And what I would like to do is just maybe give 1 minute each for each of my esteemed panel members. We'll start maybe with the first one, which is Maxwell, which is replacing Justin. Then we go on to Pavel, and then finally to Vanessa. So Maxwell, the floor is yours for 1 minute to describe your key message on cybersecurity and blockchain.
Thank you. I think the key takeaways are essentially that there's a lot of different sides to security, and you have to build infrastructure in a way that supports security. You have to develop infrastructure with a security first approach, and doing that in ways that doesn't create infighting between technologies, but rather tries to combine the best parts of technologies together, and borrows when one area is strong in something, it borrows that instead of trying to reinvent it. That's one of the things I think is a sign of the space beginning to grow up, and is something that'll start building out the infrastructure for this space in a way that it can actually support the world's needs. And I think user education is the other side of it, because no matter how much of this stuff you build, at the end of the day, if users don't understand what it is they're using, then they're going to make choices to use technologies that are insecure when there's other options available, or to use secure technologies in a way that they're compromising themselves. So I'd like to see the space continue to evolve towards technologies that use existing other technologies to improve themselves. And I'd like to see user education, people begin to understand what it is they're using and how to best actually use it to protect themselves.
Thank you very much, Maxwell. Pavel, one last set of thoughts from your side. Unmute.
Yeah, my last thoughts are, if you're a developer out there building on technologies of blockchain, they got to start moving away from using some of the, like I said, aside from the blockchain and smart contracts, they're using centralized cloud-based systems. They got to start moving away from that. And now that the decentralized infrastructure is coming up, like I said, from file storage to databases, they should start basically using more of the decentralized infrastructure to make sure the entire stack is safe and private and secure for their end customers.
Vanessa, some last words?
Okay. So my last thoughts are, if you are a developer, you should, as a company, or as a blockchain company, we should work together with regulators, with users, to create an ecosystem where it's easy for developers to come on board and provide solutions for cybersecurity to be implemented in a good way, in a secure way.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. And actually, Pavel gave us a very extremely important element, which I think is the topic for our next big session on security, and it's the issue of smart contracts security, smart contracts auditing, because this is driving the next big growth in blockchain, which is the DeFi space. So this will be our next good topic for Trescon to address in the next version of this summit. But I think we are way out of time, but I hope you enjoyed the short time that we're here, and we give you the best effort and the best energy possible. But now we go back to our MC, which is Bhavana, which will take on to the next panel and the borrowed time that I did from Dr. Marwan, which made it even more interesting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, George. In fact, the fact is that in the virtual space, you can collate something on the panels coming together. So that was quite witty of you to do that. But thank you so much for always being so kind. Thank you.
Thank you.